I have tracked my sleep for 6 years, and alcohol has been one of the clearest patterns. Every time I drink, my sleep usually pays for it, especially now in menopause. So when I had a proper celebration dinner last weekend with venison, Riesling, and the kind of evening that actually deserves a good bottle, I expected the punishment next day. Bad sleep, low energy, ugly Oura numbers, except the punishment never came. Well, I don't drink. More precisely, I don't drink just because everyone else is drinking, and I don't open a bottle at home because it pairs well with Tuesday. Not because I don't like wine, and not because I am obsessed with healthy living. I simply have enough data to know that alcohol usually punishes my sleep. I have seen it too many times to pretend it is a coincidence. So, once in a blue moon, of course, my curiosity rebels. When my husband and I finally passed our jiu-jitsu exam last weekend, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted to celebrate properly. I wanted one memorable evening with a memorable meal paired with extraordinary wine. So our neighbor, who happens to be a hunter, gave us fresh venison. One of the perks of living in a tiny German village is that sometimes your dinner was literally running through the fields a week earlier. Danny, my husband, took the grilling very seriously, as he usually does. The meat came out exactly the way wild game should. It was tender, juicy, with just enough smoke to remind you it had actually seen fire rather than a frying pan. At the same time, I had disappeared into a completely different rabbit hole, Riesling. I suddenly realized I live in one of the best white wine regions in the world, and I knew embarrassingly little about it. It turns out that for around, 30 euros, you can buy a genuinely exceptional young Riesling. The whole meal felt special. Our small family celebrating our shared achievement with an extraordinary dinner. One of those evenings where you remember that life is actually pretty good. However, in the back of my mind, one annoying thought kept lingering. Well, enjoy your indulgence. Tomorrow you're going to pay for it in occurrences of sleep and energy. The strange part is that tomorrow never came. So the next morning I woke up feeling fine. I still thought, wait until I open Oura. For those unfamiliar with it, Oura is a smart ring I use to track my sleep. The numbers would tell the real story, but they didn't. The numbers were fine too. Not perfect, but completely fine. So my first reaction was not actually relief, it was confusion. For a moment or so, I genuinely questioned the last 6 years. Had I convinced myself alcohol ruined my sleep when it actually didn't? Had I built an entire set of discipline-driven rules around myself for nothing? And believe me, I wanted the answer to be yes. It would have been a very enjoyable scientific discovery for me. I needed answers, and they're usually in the data. So I did what I always do. I went back to my Oura trends. What I like about it, it's just it does not only show what happened last night, it also shows the bigger pattern. And the exam weekend was not sitting in the middle of an average week for me. It was sitting right at the peak of my performance, physically in the body and mentally in the nervous system. Simply said, I was at my best. For weeks, I had been preparing for that jiu-jitsu exam, and that was not just training. I had been sleeping well, eating well, recovering well, and protecting my energy because I wanted to arrive at that weekend feeling strong and clear. That is when it hit me. I had been judging my body dinner by dinner, but my body had been judging me week by week, like a saving account. So for weeks, I had been making deposit. One celebratory evening was not enough to empty that account. That was uncomfortable because it meant my rules were not wrong exactly. They were just too small. I had been treating every night as if it were an isolated exam, where you either pass or fail depending on what you did that same day. But maybe sleep does not work like that. That became the real question. Not how do I control one perfect night, but what kind of baseline makes one imperfect night less powerful. It suddenly occurred to me that maybe I had not been collecting sleep data for 6 years. Maybe I had been collecting assumptions. It was time to find out which ones deserved to survive. So many of my original beliefs did not. Curiosity drove me into a frenzy of supplements, gadgets, and biohacking advice that, with time and a little more rational thinking, turned out to be mostly noise. Mind you, I did not arrive at those lessons immediately. For a while, I completely lost my mind. I bought blue light blocking glasses. I tried supplements, breathing exercises, yoga nidra, body scans, and every calming routine that promises deeper sleep. Every light bulb upstairs where I sleep became either red or orange. I became the self-appointed guardian of pitch black bedrooms and made my poor husband sleep with the open window during wintertime. Whenever we stayed in hotels, I traveled with a roll of black tape because those tiny blue LEDs on the televisions and smoke detectors suddenly looked like personal enemies. At that point, I genuinely believed a tiny blue LED in a hotel room was capable of ruining my entire night. My husband learned very quickly that switching on the bathroom light, which was white before I had my sleep mask on, was apparently a serious offense. Looking back, it is funny. But at that time, I was completely convinced I was protecting my deep sleep from a dangerous blue photon invasion. In reality, I had mixed together science, curiosity, and obsession into one big experiment. So some of those experiments helped. Most did not survive contact with my own data. If I were forced to keep only one lesson, it would be this: go to bed and wake up at roughly the same time every day, even on weekends. This one habit has done more for my sleep than all the supplements combined. I genuinely think far more people have a rhythm problem than a sleep problem. You can call yourself a night owl if you like, but your deepest sleep usually has a preferred window, and biology is annoyingly scheduled. And not respecting your circadian rhythm becomes remarkably unforgiving, especially during menopause. The second thing that survived all my experiments was a small ritual that tells my brain the day is over. Mine is very simple: red light, bathroom routine, no phone, sleep mask on. The same sequence every evening. Your routine should be yours. Experiment. Keep the parts that genuinely help and stop treating every recommendation as a universal law. For me, the red light gives my brain a very clear signal that the day is ending and that melatonin should take over. And by the way, the morning routine matters just as much, especially exposure to sunlight. But that is probably a separate video. Let me know if you are interested in the comments. The third lesson surprised me the most. For years, I focused on falling asleep. Eventually, I realized I needed to protect the sleep I already had that night. The earplugs started during my pilgrimage in Spain, where 20 adults sleeping in one room introduced me to snoring styles I did not know were biologically possible. If someone ever organizes a world championship of melodic snoring, I already have several nominees to that. When I came home, I kept wearing earplugs. Not because Danny snores terribly, but because I realized how much I enjoyed complete silence during the night. To his credit, my husband became an absolute ninja in the mornings when he was leaving for work. I still do not know how he does it. He somehow manages to get dressed, collect his things, shower, and leave the house while I'm still asleep. That's kudos to him. The separate duvet was a much harder decision for me because initially it felt like giving up one of those small rituals of becoming a couple. And instead, it turned out to be one of the most romantic decisions we ever made. We both sleep better, we both wake up happier, and strangely enough, that is a much better expression of love than waking each other every 5 minutes during the night when one rolls over. So take your time and understand yourself. If temperature is your problem, solve temperature. If noise is your problem, solve noise. If movement is your problem, solve movement. I recently upgraded to a lighter pair of earplugs because I wanted something more comfortable. Before that, I happily wore the cheap wax ones from the pharmacy for years. The point is not the product. The point is protecting your sleep from being interrupted. So 6 years ago, I thought sleeping well meant controlling everything. The right supplements, the right lights, the right temperature, the perfect evening routine. Today, I think it is something much simpler. Build a strong baseline. Pay attention. Experiment. Keep what works and quietly discard what does not. I still disappear down rabbit holes. I still buy gadgets. Well, Danny will happily confirm to that. But these days, I trust my own observations more than somebody else's certainty. Looking back, I realized something else. None of this ever felt difficult. I never had to force myself to track my sleep. I never had to force myself to experiment. Curiosity did all the heavy lifting, which made me wonder about something much bigger. Why is it that some changes feel almost effortless, while others seems impossible? We all know smoking is bad for us. We all know we should move more. We all know we should probably go to bed earlier. But knowledge has never really been the bottleneck for any of us. So what is? I have been thinking about that question for a long time. I think I finally have an answer. And that is what I want to explore in my next video.